wonderfully thoughtful answer that.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
See, advocacy also means to be some kind of a watchdog. I mean, legislations are passed, legislations are amended, new legislations come in. And, there have been situations where a new legislation has been, enacted by the parliament, but take away the rights with people, away from the people with disability. I think one of the classic examples that, one can give, not about India, but international, is the Roe versus Wade. I mean, the women's rights that have been taken away in the United States. I mean, if United States can do something, that is going to percolate and, trickle down to other countries also. So this is, a huge issue. And we have been doing a lot of work around that. We constantly monitor what the parliament is doing every day. I mean, what is being discussed in parliament on disability or otherwise, and try and, get them to look at disability. There are some, issues that may not directly concern disability in way. Suppose there is a new project that is coming on development. How is disability being addressed in that? So we even try to look at lobbying also, and that is one of the most important part of our advocacy.
Thank you. Thank you. I like that very much. Lobbying, very much.
Can I jump in?
Please, Jeremy.
On that. So first, Nilesh, thank you for bringing that up, because you're absolutely right. It is terrifying. It's something that I even struggle to get into that, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far, but I do want to say that the thing that what that shows is that here, right now, we have to be advocating for the fact that if the Supreme Court can overturn a right and create a situation where a woman doesn't know what her rights are as she travels from state to state unless she looks them up first, is absolutely absurd. And so we are now in a situation where before that was one of those rights that wasn't spelled out. Now we have to advocate for an amendment to our Constitution to spell it out clearly. And that is where we are as a nation. And it is, I was sitting here thinking as we were talking about, can the Americans with Disabilities Act be overturned just as easily? I don't believe that it can, but I didn't believe that we'd be where we are today either. So, but then getting back to that question about is advocacy enough? It's not, or not is advocacy enough, but is legislation enough? It's not. What it takes is, and it's sad that we need the legislation for it, but it takes education, it takes implementation, it takes continued assessment after implementation, and truly that concept that is huge amongst our community of nothing about us without us.
Well, that's a very interesting point. Nothing for, this webinar, we have a, and I'm now talking in rehearsal, I'm not talking in genuine terms like next week. Right. But it's actually hard not to bring up what's just happened in the Supreme Court in America, because nothing for us without us. Now it is quite feasible to rape a mentally disabled woman and force her now to give birth to a child she had no concept of even conceiving, let alone being able to care for, as an example. And so I know it's a very, very, very delicate issue, but the consequences of irresponsible action by zealous people who don't think the consequences through are issues like this, where there will be circumstances where people with disabilities will be extremely compromised by this very, very poorly thought through situation. which is in itself going to require a great deal of advocacy. And I fear that's not going to help particularly. It may come up, and if it does, it does next week. This is the thing about this webinar, is that these conversations, forget what happened in the Supreme Court last Friday. Okay, it's not about that. But these kind of dialogues may very well open up a can of worms like that. Jacqueline, what I meant was it may very well open up a situation where we have to speak about things which are perhaps politically difficult to do. Abortion is a very, very interesting subject, which absolutely not everybody agrees with, obviously. But there are consequences, and people with disabilities will certainly be implicated in this decision. And advocacy may very well be important here.
And you know, Jeremy, one, I think you did a great job of pulling that back to the concept of disabilities and advocacy. But you're right, abortion has a huge impact on the population of people with disabilities. And there are arguments for and against, you know, so, but it's about being able to have those conversations and to recognize the full impact of such decisions being made by a small group of people that are out of touch with the majority of the population they're making that decision for.
Yeah, I think the question also to me is, what do you do now? What if the Supreme Court said that outlawed disability marriages? What can you do? Supreme Court, the highest court in the country that sets the rules. What's the next step to do at that point? I mean, you feel almost powerless because they're the final say on this.
And and that's where our power is in our voices. Our power is in our ability to listen to each other, because that's huge. And within the disability community, I have learned so much from being a person with a disability and seeing how disabilities affect everyone, including the people around us, not even necessarily the person bearing the actual disability, the diagnosis. But it truly is an educating factor of that. The only way that we move forward is if we use our voices and we support one another. And yeah, I mean, is there an answer? The answer is yet again another amendment that takes the power to decide who those people are away from political parties.
Yeah, I'm afraid. And I'd like to steer it away now from that. We've raised that issue. And I mean, we don't want to turn this into a debate about this issue.
No.
I mean, trust me,
Jeremy,
I would love nothing more.
Just to interrupt you a little bit, I think
this discussion,
it's important to understand about advocacy is that you need to be attention all the time, you know, because sometimes the Supreme Court can change something. And it's for example, another case in a disability just happened in Brazil in the health system. The court just changed an interpretation, and right now the cost of health security for person with autism is almost 100% more expensive than it was like last week. So, you know, sometimes that